Namaste children. This is Jyoti Devgan from the Department of Social Science, and today I am going to teach you a new chapter, that is chapter number 6 of History, Towns, Traders and Craftspersons. Now, according to your books, what would a traveler visiting a medieval town expect to find? This would depend on what kind of a town it was, because earlier the towns were of many kinds. For example, the temple towns, the administrative towns, the commercial towns and the port towns. Now coming over to the administrative centers. You must have read about the Chola dynasty if you remember in chapter number 2. Tanjavur was the capital of the Cholas. It was almost thousands of years ago. The perennial river Kaveri, it flows near this beautiful towns. And one can hear the bells of Raja Rajeshwara temple built by King Raja Chola. The townspeople are all in praise of the architect, a very famous architect. You should remember the name, Kunjara Malan Raja Peru Thachachan, who has proudly carved his name. I know it is a difficult name to learn, but you try learning it. Now inside this temple is a massive shivling. Now beside these temples, what else will you find there? You would find the mandaps or the pavilions. What are these mandaps used for? The kings, they hold courts in these mandaps and issue orders to their subordinates. The town is bustling with markets selling grains, spices, cloth, jewelry, etc. And yes, the Salia weavers of Thanjavur and the nearby town of Urayur are the busiest, and they are busy making flags for the temple festivals. Now, temple towns and pilgrimage centers, if we talk about, basically the temple towns represent a very important pattern of urbanization, the process by which cities used to develop. Rulers built temples to demonstrate their devotion to various deities. The rulers, they also used to give heavy amount of donation, and the people who used to visit these temples used to also donate a lot of money, which was further used for feeding in the form of langars, prasad, etc. Important temple towns, if we talk about, were Tanjavur, which was the capital of the Cholas. Bilas Vamin was in Madhya Pradesh, a temple town. Somnath in Gujarat. Kanchipuram and Madurai in Tamil Nadu, and Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh. These were the famous temple towns, pilgrimage centers. Small towns emerged from large villages. They usually had a mandapika or mandi. These days you call it a mandi, where the grains and goods are purchased and sold. They also had market streets called hatta. In the present time, you call it a hart. Different kinds of artisans such as potters, oil pressers, sugar makers, toddy makers. Now what's toddy? A kind of a drink. Smiths. What kind of smiths? The blacksmiths, the goldsmiths, etc. These all, they started living around the temples, and hence the temple towns, the population started growing. There were many kinds of traders also. They usually traveled in caravans and formed guilds to protect their interests. Now, what are caravans? They used to travel from one place to another on horses. They used to carry their families along. And guilds meaning groups. They used to go in groups, and they had a lot of compatibility amongst them. There were also communities like the Chettiars and the Marwadi Oswal. Gujarati traders traded extensively with the ports of Red Sea, Persian Gulf, East Africa, Southeast Asia, and China. They started trading with the other countries as well. Now, Indian spices, remember, such as pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, also became very popular in the European homes. They started getting the flavor of the Indian spices, so automatically they wanted to trade with India. Indian cotton cloth was also in great demand. This finally, as we all know, urged or drew the European traders into India. Then talking about the craftsperson of Bidar, they were very famous. Their inlay work in copper and silver came to be known as Bidri. Not only this, the bronze bell metal. Now, what used to happen in the lost wax technique? In this, first an image was made of wax. This was covered with clay and allowed to dry. Then it was heated. A tiny hole was made in the clay cover. The whole molten wax used to be drained out through this hole. Then the molten metal was poured into the clay mold through the hole. Once the metal cooled and solidified, the clay cover was carefully removed and the image was cleaned and polished. A bronze statue of Krishna subduing the Sheshnag Kalya is here in front of you.